So this one right here is a high point, not just a high point, but a high point carbine. Not just a high point carbine, but a high point carbine chambered for, yep, 30 super carry, which is pretty doggone cool. What we're going to do today is we're going to sling some rounds downrange, obviously. Check the reliability out on this thing, check the accuracy out on this thing, talk about it, overall, some of the features, and then at the end of the video, do a little bit of rating on this thing as well. So let's get things started, and we'll do that by putting some rounds on steel. All right, putting my Ear Pro in. Today we're using these custom molded earplugs from Decibels. Been using these for a while, and they're pretty doggone cool. As far as the level of noise reduction on these things, they're just as good as the over-the-ear style Ear Pro, so pretty cool. Using 3 types of ammo today from our friends at Federal. We've got some Federal 90 grain FMJ here. We've got some Remington UMC. Yeah, they own, or Federal owns them now, in 100 grain FMJ. And then we've got some Blazer 115 grain FMJ. So let's get loaded up, put some rounds on the steel target, 25 yards, see what happens. All right, starting out here with the 90 grain FMJ. It's a little bit of a thumping on that steel. I've got to wait for it to swing back around, but looks like everything is running fine there. Next up, we've got this 100 grain from Remington. Not a problem. And now the 115 grain from Blazer. All 3, it seems to do pretty doggone well. So rounds on steel, always fun, but let's take a minute and talk about some of the features and things on this little carbine. The chambering in 30 super carry, the most important for our purposes today, does have a threaded barrel, which is nice. You've got your open sights or your iron sights, tons of Picatinny. The chassis or the stock on this thing is way different than the first generation 9mm carbine that I've got. It's much more rigid, and that's really nice. The first generation also did not have standard Picatinny rails, so being able to attach pretty much anything to this accessory wise, really super nice. I don't understand the recoil springy thing back here, but yeah, it's kind of neat too. Trigger on this thing, nothing special, what you would pretty much expect from a high point. One of the cool things, me being right-handed, is the left-hand charge. And I don't know that there's much else to talk about. The rails up here on the barrel, or under the barrel on this little piece of shroud, I think are kind of interesting too. So, since we've kind of went over most of what I think we needed to go over, now it's time to shoot some groups for accuracy. So I'm going to get things set up, going to get my Ear Pro back in, and we will get started on that. Ear Pro's back in now. We're loaded up with that 90 grain Federal ammunition. Going to be using the Ransom Multical Steady Rest on this Sunway Photo tripod. Pretty steady platform. And since this has the pistol grip, this high point, it sits on this rest pretty doggone well. So I think that's what we're going to use. Got some paper targets about 25 yards downrange. Going to shoot for some groups here and see how she does. Here we go. I don't know. That looked pretty salty. Let's move on. Check out that 100 grain. Okay, the 100 grain Remington now. Here we go. From here anyway, that one doesn't look quite as good. But we will go check that target here in a second. And now we've got that 115 grain Blazer. All right, let's go down range and see how everything looks. Holy smokes, check out these targets. Now the center on this thing, I don't know, an inch, maybe a little less than an inch. There's our Federal 90 grain. There is our Remington 100 grain, a little bit bigger group, but still pretty salty. And there is our third one, which is the Blazer 115 grain. So it does appear, I would think it likes that 90 grain, a little bit lighter projectile, probably better, at least at this 25-yard distance. Time for your favorite part of the video, time to rate this High Point Carbine in 30 Super Carry. To do that, we're going to need the CloverTacometer, so bring that up, please. Thank you very much. And yeah, this is going to be kind of a tricky one. Probably going to be some controversy with the ratings on this, I feel anyway. And so to that, anytime we're doing ratings, I would like to know what you think. And you can leave that down in a comment below. We're going to start out with looks, and I think this is going to be no surprise. I rate it bad. I don't know if there's anybody out there, even if you absolutely love High Point, if you say that this thing is beautiful, maybe beautiful in a very, very unique way, right? But overall, aesthetically, High Point's not known for being pleasing. So gonna stick with a bad rating on looks. Now, as far as feel goes, I think I'm gonna rate this thing as below average. I don't think I'm willing to go bad on it. There are some improvements that could be made. The YC series handguns have a more grippy texture on the grip. I would love to see that on this carbine, but it feels pretty good. I mean, the weight is not too terribly bad. Handles the recoil, which is negligible anyway, of that 30 Super Carry really, really well. It's not altogether a terrible feeling little carbine, at least not as bad as it looks, right? Now, when we talk about features on this thing, I'm going to go an average rating. This thing does have a ton of pick rail on it. The first gens did not have all that pick rail, and even the rail on top was not like a standard pick rail. You've got this weird recoil system thing in the back. Don't know what good that does, but it's kind of neat. I'm right-handed, so the left side charge on this thing is pretty cool. You've got your open sights standard. I think pretty standard features across the board for carbine, so I'm going to stick with that rating of average. Now the rubber meets the road with some categories that matter, like reliability. And with reliability, I'm going to go with a good rating. We tried the Federal 90 grain. We tried the Remington 100 grain, if I can talk, and the Blazer 115 grain. This thing ran fine. And that's been my experience with High Point across the board. Some of the other categories, looks, whatnot, may rank a little low. But when it comes down to the things that matter, High Point typically does a good job with it. Now, I did have some issues off camera that were totally me. And for those that don't know, I cut a lot of the stuff out to make the video palatable, where it's not an hour long of just me pulling triggers. But in every one of those instances, and there wasn't but about three, it was a first time charge on this thing after putting in a new magazine, and I did not click the magazine in all the way. Totally me. So that doesn't count as a reliability issue, and I'm going to stick with that good rating. So for accuracy, I'm going to give a good rating on this. And that's been my experience with, again, with High Points pretty much across the board. Now, whether we're talking about the 90 grain, the 100 grain, or the 115 grain, you've seen those groups. They were an inch or less at 25 yards, which, you can't complain too terribly much about that. I would like to stretch this one out to 50, 75 yards and see what happens later. But yeah, on accuracy, can't complain too much. And so I'm going to stick with that good rating. And finally, we've got value. For value, I'm going to say good. And I would say that for just about any High Point, quite honestly. Their price points are super great. But if you take into account the availability of carbines in 30 Super Carry, which, none exist, that cranks it up even more. You've got a budget-minded carbine in a chambered for a cartridge that there's just not that much out there for, which is really cool that High Point kind of jumped off that cliff, took that leap, and actually started manufacturing these little carbines. Now, with those ratings out of the way, just a reminder that we've got a lot more 30 Super Carry content coming here on the channel. So you'll want to buckle up and be paying attention for all that. I do currently have some 30 Super Carry stuff with the Avidity Arms PD10 here on the channel. And you'll be able to check that out next, if you so choose. As for this one, though, we're going to get the heck out of here. Thanks for dropping by, and we'll catch you on the next one.